Hi, and welcome to the Cornelius Seed Podcast. Thank you for checking out our podcast. Established in 1935, we're an American-owned and family-owned independent seed company. And we're excited to partner with you by bringing you 5 generations of agricultural experience and decades of industry expertise. In our podcasts, you can expect to gain valuable and timely information to aid you in making decisions for your operation. We'll keep things simple and informative, and much like our motto, planet, profit. Welcome back to the Cornelius Seed Podcast. We're whipping up a quick bonus episode right now just to get you some timely information from the field. On the line, dialed in, we have Craig Allaman, our lead agronomist, and he's actually on the road between Ames and Des Moines right now, out looking at fields. And one of the reasons why we just quickly wanted to get something together and blast it out, true armyworm out there, in particular with fields that have got rye on them. Craig, I know time is of the essence right now while we have you. What are you saying?
Well, I got a pest alert from the Iowa State Pest Alert System that they had several reports of true armyworm in eastern Iowa. So I haven't seen it myself today. We're kind of running the Route 30 corridor on the eastern half of Iowa, all the way from Anamosa to Ames. We've been so far today. We're looking at hail today, ponded out areas, drowned out areas, replant type decisions for both corn and beans. But I did have that alert pop up on as a text, which is a nice system that Iowa State runs, and they have found several cases of the true armyworm, which we'll see true armyworms earlier in the year. It's the fall armyworms that we'll get later in the year that can really devastate fields. But right now it's true armyworm time, and a true armyworm is going to come up. The moths are going to come up from the south, usually in storms. No different than black cutworm. So we kind of look for them at the same time. And Iowa State has a real good system for trapping those moths and predicting, what counties that they're going to be showing up in. So, but the the important part is it's not the first time we've seen this. You've got cereal rice sitting there when these moths come up, and it's obviously it's a grass crop, and these true armyworms are wanting to lay their eggs in grass. That's their preferred food source. So they'll come through there and lay their eggs in that cereal rye. But the problem is when we plant our corn or beans in there, usually we're planting beans into cereal rye, and then we terminate that crop. So it's no longer a food source for those true armyworms. And although they prefer grass, if the only food source they have there is soybeans, they are going to eat the soybeans, and they will just annihilate the crop. I mean, they'll just completely eat everything that's there. So that's what we're starting to see. So our alert is just to pass that on to our customers and anybody that's listening, that if you do have that cereal rye that you've planted into, you need to get out there and scout that, because if you would find it quick enough, of course, you could spray insecticide on there and kill those true armyworms before they've completely destroyed your crop. Otherwise, you're looking at a replant situation on those acres.
Is it unseasonably early, or is this just really time up well with, like you said, all these the wet May we've been having and the storms that have been coming up?
Yeah, this is very much the normal time frame. We saw this last year too, and kind of depends on the storm pattern, how active the storms coming out of the Gulf are, because that's really where they're coming from, and or how far north they reach. Last year we saw true armyworms way up into Wisconsin, and so this is just very normal. It's just a very normal time frame for it. Also, we do need to be out there, and you can get online and find their moth trapping network, and you can find which counties are hot spots where they've trapped more moths, because it's black cutworm time too. So we need to be, as we're scouting out there this time of the year, looking for cutting, plants cut off, laying there on the ground, and that's a sign that we've got black cutworm damage. And then you just look at, you could get online and find thresholds for that too, and decide how you need to scout. It's a combination of how many plants that are cut and how big or instar stage, which is just the growth stage of that black cutworm larva, how big they are, and that determines whether you need to spray for black cutworm.
Okay, and I'll go through and try to find those links and put them on the episode notes too. That way we can make it easier for folks. Does it matter the state? Is it more the stage of the crop it's in right now? I mean, I feel like we're not too far along right now. I know corn's really grown here the last week or two, but for those that haven't been drowned out, um, is it just kind of obliterated, or like, is it one of those things that's early
Well,
enough?
with the armyworms, they're just going to eat everything. With a cutworm, if the corn gets past about a foot tall with cutworm, it's going to harden off enough to where that cutworm doesn't do much damage to that plant. And then also again on that growth stage, if the if the cutworm is big enough, it's going to go ahead and finish its life cycle out, pupate, turn into an adult, and not do any more damage. So that's why you kind of look at the size for that. But no, those armyworms, they'll eat every green tissue that's out there. There won't be anything left, pretty much, of those soybeans. So.
How I know timing's of the essence with that stuff, and when in the worst infestations you've seen, found in a field one day, how quick do they move across it?
Well, it depends on how many there are, but literally armyworms. When we think of armyworms, we usually think of the fall armyworm that comes, later on in the summer, and when they finish on one field, you literally could see them covering the road as they travel over to the next field to find something to eat, and that's kind of where they get their name armyworm probably from. It looks like an army marching on. But they can be thick enough that they might take every green tissue in that field in a matter of days for sure.
Right. Well, we've hit that one pretty good. The state of Iowa is from corner to corner has seen just about everything with the exception of a drought here in the last couple of weeks. And I know in our last episode we talked about we were getting close to that May 25th, and that timeline where we consider changing maturities if necessary. And I think just from the growers in our area, it looks like we were blessed with some good windows that the guys got out there and got busy and got stuff done. I was driving back home from Missouri this weekend, and we saw tractors going at midnight. So, from floods to hail to tornadoes, what do you think is kind of the big area of focus right now for folks that that have hail damage? I mean, just get out there and replant ASAP, or let insurance do its
Yeah,
thing.
John and I, you got to get your insurance adjuster involved, of course, right away. And remember, if with federal crop, if you're going to replant, you need to notify your insurance person that you bought your insurance from before you do that. So that's an important thing to remember. But we started our day looking at hail over around Anamosa. They had pea-sized hail. I mean, it covered the ground enough to it look like snow, in the pictures they had. But there were some soybeans that were, if you break that soybean plant off below the cotyledon node, it's just done. There's no other growing points left there. But you can damage it as long as that cotyledon node is left. Those axillary buds that are on each side of that cotyledon node will go ahead and activate, and you'll have a pretty normal plant if you get as long as nothing else happens to it from that point on. So those things really varied. Most of the fields that we looked at, there was probably enough population there that it's going to be okay. But when you have a hail, any kind of an event like that where you've got injury, you really need to come back at least 5 days later, and then you can really see what that regrowth is like. Corn, of course, the corn looked worse than the beans, but the growing point on the corn plant still probably half inch, three quarters of an inch below the ground right now at the growth stage it's in. So virtually all those corn plants should make it through. We do worry sometime as that new growth comes out if the old leaves, that were injured and they're going to probably desiccate, turn brown and die. And sometimes they'll grab onto that new growth and won't let it unfurl. And you get that shepherd's crook appearance, and eventually, most times it'll pull out of there, but sometimes not. So we would look at things like that down the road. But the corn, I think, will come through it, pretty decent, although it's, set back a week or so now from what it was, but it's still going to be in the same growth stage. So, yeah, and then, there's a lot of field. I mean, I'm looking at a field right now on Route 30 that's not planted yet. It's fall worked corn stalks. There's not been anything done. I've seen a lot of bare fields, meaning nothing has emerged today. But I think, the majority of those fields got planted very recently, but they haven't come out of the ground yet. But there's still some that haven't planted. Talking to Mike Prevey this morning, there's a fair amount of acres up there in north central Iowa that if we get this rain, they're calling on Friday and then again Monday, I guess. They're seriously talking about prevent plant up there, but they've really got to look at the calendar, as to whether they're going to have enough time for that crop to mature. So it makes sense to start thinking about that. More in that southern half of Iowa, that's a different story because we can put a soybean plant on and get a crop off of it still. So there's a lot of, not off to a good start by any means. There should already be a weather effect in the markets. They're trying to ignore that as long as they can, but it's not a great crop that we're looking at right now. We've got a lot of time to go. We got great ground. We're blessed with great ground. We could recover nicely, but it's not the best start that I've ever seen. That's for sure.
No, they said tough start. Hopefully, that just means a strong finish. And as you talk about all these things, and you've talked about this before, especially with like hail injuries, you've got vectors for disease. So, it'll be important that if your field is hanging through well and keeps going, you just it's always you always preach about scouting, but if you haven't been serious about it before, you really got to stay on it this year, really just to protect your profits and what you've got left of the year.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, you can see, especially in these wet, and cool, wet soils, if you have those, see, there's some difference in seed treatments, and we've certainly seen that. That's one thing we really try to do is keep on top of that game and make sure that we're using the latest and the best treatment for our customers. And I think we've had some pretty good success with that. It looks like this year on some of the premium, seed treatments like Viantis that we added a couple of years ago. So
it was, and that was pretty neat hearing that on this Tuesday update call with Rick Brenda is out that we came on over from 4-Star Seed with us about seeing that in the plant right out of the gate. So that's pretty cool in terms of emergence. Yep. Any other? I know you're almost to where you need to be, or maybe you're already there and just waiting outside. People looking at you. But any key? What's one big takeaway? The obvious scouting, and especially for that true armyworm we just talked about. If you've got cover crop situation, what else do we need to focus on right now in this week, and this next week or two?
I think we're kind of in a wait and see period. I don't know that we need to focus on anything other than, we're going to have to make those tough decisions as to when do I decide that it's too late to fill in the potholes, or if you're in northern Iowa, to get that field planted and have any hope of a crop. So we're making those decisions in a lot of areas. That next big thing that we're looking at is rootworm larvae ought to be hatching out real shortly. So another couple weeks or so here, we should be able to get out and dig and see what our rootworm control program has been like. In these saturated soils, if we've got an insecticide, that's always a question mark, how good the insecticide is going to work. Has it been washed on down? Things like that. So we'll be looking at those kind of things, and it's not much you can do at that point, but we make decisions on what types of approaches we use next year based on how it worked this year. So.
Well, that makes like you've said this before. Keep an eye on them fireflies. That's kind of your trigger to know once those are going at night. It's been larva's been hatching.
I think I saw one on my windshield the other day. The problem with that anymore is at my age, I don't stay up until dark anymore. So You're going to have to tell me when the fireflies are flying.
Oh
Because
boy, we've got a newborn and a boatload of kids at home. We'll have to tap one of them for that. But
perfect.
yeah. All right, awesome. Well, hey, Craig, thank you so very much for your time. Thank you folks for tuning in. Check us out on Instagram or X or Facebook. And here recently, we've uploaded all of our episodes onto YouTube. So if that's a platform that you're on, check us out. As always, go to signup.corneliusseed.com and you can get in on some of these notifications. Until the next one, thank you.